iPhone 12 camera tutorial. In this video, we are going to take a deep dive into using the amazing camera on the iPhone 12. There's information in here that will help beginners and pros alike, and you'll be able to benefit from it even if you own a different iPhone. They share a lot of similar features. Let's get started. First, let's launch the Settings app to peek under the hood of what the camera app can do. In Settings, let's scroll down to Camera and tap it. You'll see a list of camera settings. The first thing you'll notice is Formats. Let's tap into that. You get two options: High Efficiency and Most Compatible. High Efficiency helps keep your photo file sizes smaller. It's a great way to save storage space on your phone. The next option is Most Compatible. The file sizes of your photos and videos will be a little bigger, but they will also be more compatible with other computers and apps. This is the option I use. Pick the one that makes the most sense to you. If we go back, we can select Record Video. This is where you can choose the resolution and frame rate you want to shoot your videos in. It starts as low as 720p HD 30 frames per second and goes as high as 4K 60 frames per second. I like to set this to 4K 24 frames per second because Hollywood films are shot at 24 frames per second. It's cinematic looking. That being said, if you are shooting fast-moving objects or like to move your camera around quickly, 4K 60 frames per second may be a better option for you. I do suggest choosing 4K over 720p or 1080p HD if you want to record the highest quality video from this phone. 4K looks great on a large screen TV. The lower quality resolutions will look their best on smaller screens. Think about where you will be showing your videos when choosing one of these settings. Here's what 24 frames per second looks like. Here's what 60 frames per second looks like. The difference may be subtle to most people. Apple shows you on this screen how the different resolutions and frame rates affect file size. Something to keep in mind. The only downside of shooting 4K over 1080 or 720p HD is that you will go through storage space faster. If we scroll down, you will see the HDR video option. HDR stands for High Dynamic Range. It records video that has more color and more information in the shadows and highlights of the image than non-HDR video. But to really see it, you'll need a Dolby Vision HDR device. You can see the difference on this iPhone. The image gets brighter, for example, and it's quite stunning when you view it with your own eyes. But if you plan on watching your videos on a non-HDR screen, you may want to turn this option off. Lock Camera. Because the camera has two lenses, you can switch between them when shooting video by zooming in and out with your fingers on the screen. However, when you do this, you will see a slight jump when the lenses switch. Lock Camera keeps the lenses from automatically switching while zooming, therefore you won't get the jump. The downside is that you can only use one lens at a time when zooming with your finger, which can be limiting. If we go back, we can tap Record Slow-mo. This is where you set the frame rate of the slow motion video that you want to shoot. You can choose 1080p HD at 120 frames per second, 1080p at 240 frames per second high efficiency, or 720p HD at 240 frames per second. As you can see, it looks pretty good, even blown up to 4K. If we go back, you will see the Record Stereo Sound option. The phone has multiple microphones on it to record your audio in stereo. Here's what that sounds like. I'm recording an audio test. We are in stereo right now. I'm going to move myself around to see if we can hear the sound moving from one side to the next. I'm over on the left side of the phone. Now I'm over on the right side of the phone. Now I am in the middle of the phone. Here's what it sounds like when I turn Record Stereo off. Right now I'm on the left side of the phone, and this is what I sound like. Right now I am on the right side of the phone, and this is what it sounds like. Now I am right in the middle of the phone, and this is what it sounds like. Preserve settings is for preserving your camera settings rather than letting them automatically reset. That's helpful if you want to use your camera consistently the same way, like defaulting to video or photo mode, or preserving creative controls like always using the same filter, for example, or keeping exposure adjustment the same, or always leaving live photo on. It really depends on how you use your camera. I mainly leave these off and decide as I am shooting the settings I want to use. I don't mind changing them. You may have different needs. By the way, what is live photo? Basically, live photo records what happens 1.5 seconds before and after you take a picture. What you get is more than a still photo. It's a moment captured with movement and sound. To view a live photo, just hold your finger on the screen, and your picture comes to life. If we go back, you'll see Use Volume for Burst, which simply means that while the camera app is open, if you have this on, pressing the volume up button on the side of your camera will shoot a burst or multiple photos all at once. This is great for trying to capture the perfect moment when shooting something that is hard to predict or is fast moving. Scan QR codes is about scanning codes usually located on a product. For example, when I scan the Wikipedia QR code displayed on another phone, the iPhone 12 offers a link generated by the code to Wikipedia's website. If I click on it, I can go to their website. If you don't want your camera to scan a QR code when it sees one, turn this option off. Grid is next. I like to have the grid lines on. It divides your screen into thirds, but the lines are just for framing purposes. They don't actually record onto your image. The rule of thirds in photography basically says to put your subject off-center to create interesting framing. The grid lines help you with this off-center framing. Just place your subject on the lines or where they intersect. It's a guide. Next is mirror front camera. When you are taking a selfie photo, turning on mirror front camera simply means the image will appear as you see yourself in the mirror, instead of flipped as it usually is after the picture has been processed. The only downside to this is when you are wearing something with text on it. The text will appear backwards. We want to turn mirror front camera off in those situations. View outside the frame simply means that when you look at the screen before taking a photo, you get to see the extra parts of the image that you are framing out. The extra parts are darker. This reminds you other ways you could possibly frame your shot using different aspect settings or the other lens. I personally leave this off, but you may find it helpful. Scene detection. According to Apple, with scene detection, the camera intelligently detects what you are taking a photo of and applies a tailored look to bring out the best qualities in the scene. I generally prefer to manually control most aspects of my photography, so I usually turn it off. But when I do shoot with it on, it actually seems to do a good job. It seems to make subtle enhancements. You'll want to experiment with this setting. Prioritize faster shooting is next. When you are rapidly pressing the shutter button to get multiple shots, your phone may adjust quality settings to ensure that you are able to capture all of these images when this option is on. I tend to leave this setting on. I'd rather go lower quality than miss the shot due to image processing. Lens correction is next. I like to leave this on. When you use the ultra-wide lens, the edges of the frame may distort or curve a little bit. It can be unnatural looking, and this option fixes that. Smart HDR refers to taking photos. It's great for scenes that have too much contrast in them, when the darks are too dark or the brights are too bright. The iPhone intelligently blends the best parts of separate exposures into a single photo. This shot, for example, was very backlit. The front of the subject was dark in reality, but Smart HDR evened out the lighting. Now that we went over the camera settings, let's take a look at the camera app itself. Let's launch it. If you swipe left or right, you navigate through the different camera modes. They are Pano, Portrait, Photo, Video, Slo-mo, and Time-lapse. Let's go over each one and all of their controls. Pano is for shooting wide panoramic shots. Your camera basically shoots multiple images and stitches them together for a super wide shot. You hit the shutter button and then slowly pan the camera while trying to keep the on-screen arrow on track. After you have moved the camera enough, the photo is saved. The finished pano is pretty cool. You'll notice the 0.5x and the 1x option. This switches between the normal lens and the wide lens on the camera. I really love the lenses on this camera. You can quickly go to all of your captured photos by tapping the image in the lower left-hand bottom of the screen. You can press this button to share and organize your photos in a variety of ways. From AirDrop to messages, from mail to Instagram, Apple makes sharing quite easy. Portrait mode is next. It's great for taking portraits. It isolates the subject by creating a nice soft out-of-focus background look. You'll notice the selfie option for using the selfie camera. Just tap it. Tap it again to use one of the other two cameras. You can also select the light mode from natural light all the way to high key light mono. These options control how the camera lights the face and how it affects the background of the shot. I mainly leave it on natural light for the most natural look. If we press this up arrow at the top, it rotates down and reveals a bunch of different controls. The first one is Flash Auto, on or off, which obviously controls the flash on the camera. Exposure control is next. It's the plus or minus symbol. Here you can tell the camera to expose the auto exposure setting darker or brighter, all the way from -2 to +2. The phone usually does a good job with exposure, so I typically leave it on 0. The timer is next, which can be turned on and then set to 3 seconds or 10 seconds. I'll select 10, then press the shutter. 10 seconds later, it takes the shot. Nice for putting yourself in the shot. I'll turn it off now like this. Then you can give your photo a look using various filters. From original to vivid warm to vivid cool to dramatic warm to dramatic cool to mono to Silvertone to Noir. These filters are pretty nice if you want to use them. Then you get the f-stop control. The f-stop goes from f1.4 up to f16. This control will be familiar to photographers. Basically, the lower the f-stop setting, the better for low light shooting and making the background of the image blurrier. The higher the f-stop number, the sharper the background will be, but usually more light is required to get a clean image. Photo mode is next for taking regular photos. You can see we can switch between the wide and tighter lens by tapping 0.5x or 1x. The selfie button is down here. If we tap the up arrow at the top, more controls are revealed, like flash auto on and off. Then we have live photo auto, on or off. This is what a live photo looks like. The next option is aspect ratio. You can choose from square, also known as 1:1, 4:3, or 16:9. Here are examples of each. Then we have exposure compensation again, then the timer. Then we have the different filters you can shoot in again. Now let's talk about night mode. When light levels are low, you'll see a moon icon on your screen. This is night mode. When you tap it, you can turn it off, set it to auto in the middle, or set it as high as max, which in some cases could be 29 seconds. This keeps the camera's shutter open longer than normal when you take a picture, which allows you to take good pictures in very dim light. It works best when using a tripod or at least holding the camera as still as possible. I took this picture in near darkness, just using a candlelight with no flash. And look how good it came out. Now let's check out video mode. As you can see in the upper right-hand corner of the screen, the resolution and frames per second settings are displayed. We are shooting 4K 24 frames per second. You can tap these settings to easily change them. Pressing the red shutter button begins recording. We see the runtime counter of our video displayed on the top center of the screen. Tap it again to stop recording. We can switch between the wide and tighter lens by tapping 0.5x or 1x. If we drag one of those numbers to the left a little bit, we get a zoom wheel. You've seen the other controls earlier, like turning on the selfie camera. Let's swipe left to get into Slo-mo Mode. As you can see in the right-hand corner of the screen, we are set to record slow motion video in 720p at 240 frames per second. You can tap these settings to easily change them. The flash icon on the upper left just turns the camera light on and off. Let's swipe left now and go to Time-lapse Mode. In case you didn't know, time-lapse is the technique where your camera records a single frame every so often over a period of time and combines the individual frames into one video. This compresses time. Say for example we were shooting a sky with clouds in it for 30 minutes. In real time, we barely notice the clouds moving, but in time-lapse, the clouds move across the sky in a matter of seconds. It looks awesome. This technique works best when the iPhone does not move. If we click the arrow up button at the top, it reveals the plus or minus exposure control. To begin recording a time-lapse video, simply press the red shutter button, then go and relax. Time-lapses should be shot for at least 10 minutes or longer. A few more things I wanted to go over. I wanted to show you how to lock exposure and focus. This is helpful when you see that your iPhone camera is hunting around for focus and not focusing on the right thing. This doesn't happen often, but sometimes you'll run into it. You simply tap on your subject and then hold your finger against the screen. You'll see AE/AF lock. Auto exposure, autofocus lock. To turn it off, simply double tap on a different part of the screen. You can also adjust exposure using your finger. Tap the screen, then adjust your exposure up or down by sliding your finger up and down on the screen. double tap somewhere else to go back to auto exposure. These are handy things to know when the auto settings aren't quite working. Well, I hope you learned something from this video. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe.